Hello, welcome to another episode of SaaS Scaled. I'm pleased to have Carlos with us. Very special guest. I will explain why. But before than that, I will let Carlos introduce himself and let us a little bit about what he does.
Well, hey, happy to be here and thank you for calling me special. I am the founder and CEO at Product School. Product School is the global leader in product training with a community of over 2 million members at this point. I
Mhm.
started the company 10 years ago before product management was cool. So it's been really amazing to see how this whole industry has evolved from the technology standpoint, but also from the career standpoint. And now we see a lot of other companies with a chief product officer. So today the role of product is definitely more mainstream and not like it used to be when I started.
Fantastic. Uh, so I know that you have written a book, and I know that you are writing a second book, hopefully coming soon. And I wanted to really understand from your perspective what was the evolution, meaning that when you started the first book and then you continued getting to the second topic, what happened in between? What is the first book about? What is the second book about? And the way you evolved your mentality, you kind of, thought about more aspects of product during this time.
Sure. Well, I'm an entrepreneur through and through, and I never really thought about writing a book when I did it. I actually started my company as a way to solve my own problem, which is, hey, I learned how to build products, but by failure. Like never went to a product school to learn product management, and that was the case for a lot of other product leaders out there. So as I started the business and we created different courses to help people break into product, then we realized that there was a lot of, they weren't really a golden standard. Like everybody was trying to reinvent the wheel and do their own thing. And not everybody had access to courses because they were expensive at the time. So I decided to democratize that type of access to education and publish a book that I actually self-published and made free. So anyone who was interested in the topic could benefit from it. And the whole point was around helping aspiring product managers learn how to build digital products and become PMs. And the title of the book is called The Product Book, a very implicit. And that was the rationale behind it. So I started with the course, like the content, and then I found a different avenue to repurpose some of that content into a book. Now, what's happening, I mean, during these 10 years is that now many more people know what product management is. There's many more product managers. There are more companies hiring PMs, and we've seen an entire evolution of that function. That now there is a more defined career ladder that goes all the way up to a chief product officer. That's really incredible because when I started the company, the end goal for most people was to become product managers. That was like, okay, I made it. Well, in reality, that's just the beginning of an entire new journey, right? Like once you become a PM, that's when the fun really starts. And now we have references out there. We have many companies that have a chief product officer, which, by the way, are not high-tech companies in Silicon Valley, right? We're talking about companies in oil and gas, on financial services, or in healthcare. So that's truly becoming a well-defined function. And that's what the second book is all about. It's about helping experienced product managers navigate that career ladder to help them grow as fast as possible and become the next generation chief product officers.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, you're right. I mean, even outside software, you see that many product managers increasingly have become CEOs and the leaders of the company. I mean, GM is a good, for example that it's a good example because it's not a software company, but it's a huge, you know, business, and the person in charge of product actually became the CEO and took the helm of leadership of the business. And looking at the company from that angle, it just comes with a lot of benefits because when you are a product manager, as you know better than many of us, you have to really deal with many different aspects of the product. You have to interact with different parts of the company. Everybody comes to you from sales, from marketing, from other aspects, and of course, engineering and architects and DevOps and everybody else. You need to have a very good understanding and good way to communicate with all of these people. And you need to really interface well in order to coordinate. And you are the kind of orchestra, in a way, conductor, right? So you are not a violinist yourself, you are not a pianist, but you are really orchestrating everything to come out very nicely. So, yeah, from that aspect, you're absolutely right. Companies who really build a solid product and then build a business around the product are going to have a more longer term kind of vision and view versus not paying enough attention to the product as a core of what they offer. Of course, if they are service-based companies, different. We are talking here about the product-based kind of businesses, but software businesses included as well. How do you see the growth? For example, you have been there for some many years, and you mentioned that when you started, product management was not as known as it is today, and the community of product managers is growing fast as well. Can you give us some kind of indication, if you have any, that, what kind of number of product managers in software companies we are talking about now? I mean, we are talking about, how many of them today in the US or worldwide, whatever number you can share with us, if you can give us some kind of ideas that how big this community is and how fast it's growing.
Yeah, so our community is over 2 million product professionals from all over the world. Obviously, there are many more product professionals out there who are not part of our community yet. So we're talking tens of millions at this point of product professionals who are working at different companies. And that is going to continue growing because I've seen this go from pretty much non existent into where we are today in the tens of millions. Um, Now, that being said, there's also not a linear progression, and we are currently in a downturn where a lot of companies are reducing the size of their product teams for multiple reasons, and we can go into that if you want. But that's one point. Like the other point is companies are not just investing in product because it's cool. They are investing in product because it works. It makes them money. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. So we've seen also the evolution of this function from being very reactive and not well understood, pretty much as a project management support function that's considered in many cases a cost center, into what today is a revenue generator, where product is becoming accountable for revenue growth, and because it's able to show those type of results, then it's deserving more attention and a bigger space within a company. So those two things are happening at the same time. Like the product function is becoming more strategic. That's why it's earning that seat at the table. That's why there's a chief product officer. At the same time, we're seeing that not everything is rainbows and sunshines, and that in order to maintain that seat at the table and stay relevant, we also need to show way more value. And if that's not the case, then those teams are going to get reduced.
Yeah, so if you go back, when I say go back, meaning go back 2 decades, 3 decades ago, product management existed, but as you said, it was not democratized, right? And you could see mainly two school of thoughts back then. Some product managers, they come from marketing world, meaning that product management was a function or a subset of the marketing department, and they were really trying to manage product to be market oriented. And then there was the second school of thought that sometimes product management was managed by engineering team, and people who were doing the engineering also they were managing the product. And still we have good examples, some good examples of those type of companies. I do remember that I always catered to the idea that product management should report to me as a founder CEO, and I wanted them to have the independence, not be under engineering or be under marketing, for two different reasons. Maybe our product always has been more a platform, a little bit more technical, and I thought that for two different reasons, being under marketing or being under engineering may not be the best. But I do remember at one point I looked at some statistics, and it was only less than 5% of companies the way they do it. Nowadays, product management is a independent function, it's well defined, and for most parts, they are actually, that I see around myself, they actually report to CEO. They are not reporting to engineering, they are not reporting to marketing, they are not reporting to finance. They are their own function. It's well known and it's independent. Uh, Now, is it the same observation you have that product management nowadays, the best model is for them to be independent and report to CEO, or you have seen some other models that works well?
I think you're right. The last data that we have is that over 50% of the Fortune 100 already have a chief product officer, meaning the highest ranked product person in the organization is reporting into the CEO. That is incredible, and that number has been growing year over year. So my estimation is that we are going to get close to 80% within the next 3 to 5 years. That is really, really impressive. Now we can debate if the CEO should wear the hat of the CPO because of their background and the involvement in the product, or at some point they also want to empower someone to wear that hat. But regardless, clearly we're seeing that the CPO is a well-defined function, way beyond high-tech companies, way beyond just Silicon Valley, and that it's in between technology and go-to-market. Long gone are the days where the highest ranked product person in the organization is under a chief technology officer or a chief marketing officer.
So now talking about really product management, of course, it's a number of things. It includes product strategy. It includes managing the operation of the product. It also includes interacting with product marketing. So any organization may look at product marketing, of course, in a way that, product management cannot be the perfect product marketing, or vice versa. How do you see that in most organization they define the product strategy versus product marketing versus product management, and how do they draw the line between these?
Mhm. Well, that's part of the work that we do with a lot of large companies, org design, right? And there is no silver bullet, unfortunately, because a lot of that is influenced by your current position in the market, the current leaders that you have on the team, and there is value in adjusting some of those definitions to make the most out of it for your situation, right? So, but if we were to zoom in into the product function, there are three clear components that are now becoming its own entity as the product function evolves. One is what you mentioned, product management. Let's think of it as as a cycle where there's three key components. You have the discovery piece, right? Like all things around like what we need to build. Then you have the development or the building piece, which is okay. Now we have clarity on what we want to build. We're going to build it. And then you have this go-to-market piece, the launch piece. Okay, we build it. Now we need to put it into market and hopefully it becomes successful. And I say it's a cycle because it really never ends. It's not just a perfect sequence of events. So under those three stages, you have the overarching product strategy. So to me, the way I think about products, those four key themes. Um, when the companies are small, typically a product manager or a product team would be fully responsible for everything, right? Like they will be doing the discovery, then they will be doing the development, they will be doing the product marketing or the go-to market and the strategy. That makes sense. And that's what I did when I was a founder and didn't even have a product manager, right? I was that de facto product manager. And I see you smiling, so I can imagine you've gone through that motion multiple times too. But as the companies specialize, right, and start seeing more value from this, eventually you see that there's a product marketing function that is extremely critical at helping the team identify what to build next, but also make sure that what's being built is actually going to be adopted and successful with the market. So that is great when that happens and you have a product marketing team. Then we can debate if that product marketing team should report to the chief product officer or should report to a chief marketing officer. Again, really depends on the type of leadership that you have. But clearly we're seeing that growth of that sub-function, if you will. We're also seeing how product growth is becoming very, very relevant as companies start leveraging product as a revenue channel in terms of allowing users to access the product, get value from the product even before they make a purchase, or even if they already made a purchase, how they can upgrade to a higher tier. So for product teams that are mature, we're seeing also it's a function called growth, which sometimes would report under a chief product officer, sometimes would also report to a chief marketing officer. But ultimately, you are seeing how product and marketing are becoming much more interconnected. And that makes sense because ultimately, product has to be connected with go to market. Like the real value of product is when it's really driving revenue for the organization. Because if it's not driving revenue for the organization, if they are just in a corner building the thing that someone told them to build, then it becomes more of a cost center. Then it's kind of under technology, and then it's when you lose all this opportunity to lead with product.
Now, when we are talking about really product, one of the uh, terms that comes to my mind, and you mentioned it as well, is product-led growth or PLG, and there are pros and cons to it, and there have been so many discussions around it. And it's not for every company, every product, but it works beautifully for some companies, for some products. From your perspective, if you wanted to advise me and other you know, software companies, how would you characterize it? That if PLG is good for us to implement, does it work well for us? Or some attributes that you may say may prevent you from actually implementing PLG successfully for your organization?
Yeah, but like in any situation, when I talk to different leaders and they're considering an investment into their product strategy, we really need to go through the discovery phase to understand pros and cons. But in general, to me, this is a very cost efficient channel with very limited downside. And let me explain that. Because ultimately, if you implement this PLG motion, right, you are going to have an opportunity to better monetize existing users who are in your platform and maybe are free and they could now become paid without having to now invest in outbound channels, right? Like they are already with you. They probably need to better understand the value that your product is providing in order to convert. So I see that as a really interesting opportunity. But the other thing is they can this motion makes existing marketing investments more effective. Because if you already have investments in, let's say, paid acquisition or other type of outbound channels, and they are bringing traffic to your platform, then if you have a better mechanism to convert that type of traffic within your platform, you are making those existing investments more efficient. So from a pure theoretical standpoint, PLG seems to make sense. Now, there is also reality, right? And when you so in let's say a B2B SaaS product, typically PLG is not just an option, it's like the main option, right? But there are many other types of products where PLG is not that obvious. And we work with clients, let's say in financial services, who have been successful under a specific type of motion. Let's call it sales-led growth, right? Where they have the classic, well, I'm going to talk to I'm going to talk to a customer, I'm going to give them a demo, and they are not going to use the product until someone pays. And usually the person who pays is different from the person who's going to use the product. So how can you find ways to use this as an additional opportunity to grow revenue? I think that's where the magic is, right? To me, it's not about, hey, it's PLG or it's SLG. It's more about what is your current go-to-market motion? How is your org design structure? And let's think of ways that can grow your revenue. As simple as that. And like if you treat it as a product where you can make small bets and iterate, you de-risk much more this type of investment, right? Because I completely understand. Like if you suddenly go and switch the flip and start changing their motion, you are going to have many more risks. So it's applying this product mindset not just for your own customers, but also for your own team to find ways to experiment while knowing that even if something doesn't work, it's okay, but like if you do not try, then is when you are going to die. Like to me, I always tell this to my teams: if your product is not growing, it is dying. We are in a very binary world where you cannot afford not to invest in growth. You cannot afford not to experiment with new ways of growing revenue.
Now, one of the terms you used or mentioned was really on the B2B side. I wanted to know from your perspective at product school, do you guys really bring people uh, on B2B side versus B2C side in two different courses and you train them separately? Or from your perspective, there are so many things that from product management perspective is shared. Doesn't matter if you are really doing product management for a B2C company or B2B company, you can still go through the same, path and get educated and trained on product management. How do you see it from that aspect?
I love that question because when I started the company, I had a lot of haters saying it is not possible to teach product management because product management is different in every organization and because you need to be born as a visionary and this and that. I'm like, you know what? Let me try. Because first of all, yes, I understand there are nuances in every organization, not just within product, but within every function. That being said, there's a lot of patterns, and I would say at least 80% of those patterns and good practices can be applicable. And it's actually up to each individual to then find the right way to adjust that to their current context. I'm not here to teach you that context that you already have, but I can teach you the 80% that is going to be extremely valuable. And not just because I'm saying so, it's because the instructors that are teaching our program are like senior product leaders at some of the most successful product companies in the world that have been doing this for a very long time. I'm talking about instructors come from Netflix, Airbnb, Google, Meta, and so on, right? Companies that are product first. They didn't have to do this type of transformation. Now, I understand that not everything can be, it's not just, oh my God, I'm going to read Carlos's book and suddenly I'm going to become a great product manager and I'm going to follow everything to the T. We do have two businesses. We have our B2C business where we offer public trainings. And for those public trainings, we have experienced PMs joining from different organizations. So those are live online cohorts with, let's say, 15 different product managers and a product instructor. And we follow a specific curriculum. And then we use specific examples from different types of products, B2C, B2B, marketplace, SaaS, e-commerce, you name it. And obviously, it's all about building, right? So we get the students to build and receive real-time feedback from the instructors, which is a very, very interactive experience. But ultimately, it is with different people from different organizations. Now, our main business is what we call B2B. It's the private training that we do for some of these large organizations. Most of them are in the Fortune 100. When we do that, that's way more custom because we can get to understand these specific problems, right? Like their product strategy, their OKRs, their org design. What are they trying to accomplish? So from there, we can put together specific learning paths and solutions for different groups of the organization.
Now, the other topic that it didn't, it didn't surface, but we need to talk about it because it's just there. And for some cases, it acts like a feature, and some other cases, it acts more like a revolutionary kind of foundation that is changing even the whole business is AI, and in particular, Gen AI at the moment, that is a subset of AI and is kind of very, kind of, a hot discussion. And when you look at AI, the way it works, for many cases, I see it more as a utility that, the way that you don't see electricity, but it's everywhere and it's helping our business and our life every second without being visible. Probably AI is going to get there and be everywhere, helping us in the background or on the foreground, doesn't matter, but very, very much like invisible, but be getting help from it. How do you see on the product management side the way AI has already impacted, and also the way you may see that it's going to be impactful in the future? It might be productivity, it might be the metrics that product management needs, it might be more acceleration in development and getting help and providing advice to the product team members. Whatever you can think of, how do you see it as of today, and also how it goes in the future?
Arman, I'm obsessed with this topic as well because, first of all, I'm a tech optimist. I also live in Silicon Valley. So this is something that we've been brewing for quite some time, right? So as I think about the classic maturity curve, I see a lot of us who've been early adopters who already start to see some of those benefits and how this is going to become even more mainstream and more people are going to be able to participate. I'll share a quick example. So the other day I took my kids to San Francisco and we took a Waymo, like a self-driving car. And I remember the first minute, everybody was like, oh, wow, this is so incredible. How is it going to work? And then 1, 2 minutes in, everybody stopped paying attention. And then they realized, I can go from point A to point B. This actually works. And it's fine, right? Like, in fact, we start thinking about other benefits around, well, maybe this is actually going to be cheaper for the user, or maybe now I can have more privacy and I can feel more comfortable around sharing what type of music settings I want, whatever that might be. That's similar to what I see with AI. Like, AI has, many of us have been using AI for quite some time, right? And feeling comfortable with it. Now we're putting it at the forefront of a lot of our products because it sells, because obviously there's much more innovation happening. But at the end of the day, I can totally see how a lot of users will stop you saying AI, and they will just assume that they are getting value from a specific product. They do not need to know what type of automation is happening behind the scenes. They just know that this is adding value to their life, hence are willing to continue using that product, and that's it. So I'm extremely bullish on this, and I continue to believe, and we are continue to invest in this type of transformation. In fact, we do have a certification on AI for product, where we are training experienced PMs on how to find opportunities to integrate Gen AI as part of their product strategy. This is happening. Like, and what's mind blowing to me is that there's so many people still not even using it. Like, there is no downside today to even try, right? Like, I don't understand why someone who is involved in technology, who is already reading how all of these changes are happening and how this could impact them either positively or negatively, are not even willing to play with it to see what's really happening for them.
Very good point. Yeah, very good point. So definitely, there is no excuse not to try it. But I mean, what you see is most of these product development teams have already implemented a lot of these utilities from different aspects, right? From collecting metrics, from writing simple codes rather than they write it, from getting advice from security pen test and those kind of things to really be more smarter and be smarter, and also from even sometimes I'm not sure if I have seen anything practically yet in action, but probably we will see soon from QA perspective, for example, that may help the product team as well. So many different aspects that definitely I would say AI is going to be helpful. And I don't know if you have some particular examples or aspects you want to
Absolutely.
highlight.
Absolutely. I've been using this for QA purposes and other purposes within product teams, and happy to share more. I mean, one of the benefits also of being here in high tech, or in my position, like working in product, is I get to use and meet a lot of the CEOs building products for product teams, and they are all incorporating AI. So I'll give you some examples. So first of all, from the QA perspective, since you mentioned that, a lot of these platforms are now able to gather data from so many different systems to gather different feedback from users, not just users, but also other types of data, anecdotal data. It could be also internal discussions from product teams. You can connect to your CRM, you can connect to your roadmap, and like use that as a way to then draw insights and help you define what to build next based on what is happening. And as you said before, some of the decisions are around features and new features. Others are around improving existing features, fixing bugs, you name it. But like this AI, this underlying technology is helping product teams better get to what to build next much faster. I think the next frontier is to leverage AI to even fix it directly, to not
Mhm.
just know what to do, but even go and do it themselves as much as possible. Obviously, there will be situations that you also need to interject, but that's already here. Another use case that is very, very common in product is this discovery. Like, we're seeing how a lot of UX research teams are now being ranked because how you can leverage user insights at scale much faster. You can run many more user interviews. You can connect the dots much faster, and sometimes you do not need that many people out there trying to do that manually. Another huge use case that we are seeing is on data analytics.
Mhm.
Back in the day, not too long ago, actually, in order to get data, you need a data team. And that data team would hold the keys to the data tool, right? So and even if they give you the keys, you still need a technical expertise to go and talk to the databases. Like, that is a huge barrier of entry. Now there's two things that are happening with that. One is you do not need to speak SQL or a database language in order to talk to a database. You can use natural language like this one and say, hey, what's the revenue that we generated last week? And it's up to the tool to go and translate that into a language that works for a database. So that's huge, because now many more people can access data, but also the way to access the data is much more fluid. You do not need to hold the keys of the kingdom. You do not need to log in into the tool to then go and query your prompt. You can ask that question in any system. You can ask that question on your email. You can use your question on your Slack. You can use that question anywhere, and that is also helping more product teams. So it's definitely here. That's probably more early adopter stuff for the AI first product teams that are now obsessed around using this technology. But man, this is happening, and like, even though maybe for some people listening, they're like, well, I'm not ready because XYZ, you can get some early wins right now, right? Like, there is no reason why you can't just use one of these free AI tools to at least get some support around like some of the documents that you are building, some of the hypotheses that you are creating, some of the feedback that you are generating, and use that to just accelerate the rhythm at which you make decisions.
No, definitely. I mean, even honestly, from product building perspective, we are kind of getting into a new era that some of these products, one of them, I'm working with it, it's in beta and I'm trying it actually to use for ourselves. And the product is less about coding. Whoever built this product, majority of time was spent on prompt engineering and actually prompt optimization. So what I'm doing with this UI, actually behind the scene, the secret sauce behind really this product helping me is the good prompt engineering optimization they have done, not because they have written a lot of code. My guess is probably the minimum size code that I ever seen. Probably the amount of code is written in this program is less than a day, and the amount of prompt engineering is probably a few months to really optimize it. And what it means I can do exactly all the functions that this product is doing by myself, just going to, for example, ChatGPT or any other LLM and do the prompt. But I need to know how to ask these questions. I need to practice a lot of time, a lot of, several attempts in order to get to the point to really write these prompts. This application is actually giving me right away. I just go there, put everything there. Behind the scene is just doing all of the prompts right for me and getting the response. Not that I couldn't do it by myself, but it would have taken a lot of time and it would have taken a lot of experience. But it's more about really prompt engineering optimization, not about writing code, but the product is delivering anyway the help I need.
Correct. I agree. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's not about writing anymore. It's about editing. It's asking the machine to write for you and then have the capability to edit. And that started with engineering, but it's expanding into other functions. And product is a prime example for that. And in fact, I argue that the ability to edit or prompt engineer is becoming much easier, because back in the day, yes, you had to learn all of these complex queries that you had to put on ChatGPT in order to get the right result. Now we're seeing how the machine has so much more context around your situation, because they are importing data from other systems that are proprietary, right? So even without creating the perfect prompt, the machine already knows a lot about you and can help you shape a solution that is much more custom to your needs. And of course, you can keep iterating to the point where you think it's right for you. But like, that is the biggest shift right now. I think PMs specifically are going from like not having to do the thing to now asking the machine to do it for them and just focusing on the editing piece.
Fantastic. Uh, Again, has been a great discussion, Carlos. This topic is near and dear to my heart, and you are very good at it, so we can talk and for a long time. At least on my side, learning and also not getting tired of it. But we will leave it to maybe the next episode sometime later. But at this time, I would like to ask you if you could introduce and share with us any book that either you personally liked it or professionally it was impactful in what you do. We would love to hear from you about your choices.
Yes, of course. One thing I learned about just building products is that the biggest problems are not around technology, are about just people, right? Like people problems, people opportunities is what I deal with on a daily basis. And coming from an engineering background and now a product background, I didn't have all of the tools to deal with that. So I had to invest in myself and put a lot of time and money into coaching, therapy, peer groups, and just in general soft skills to understand people dynamics and how to build high performing teams. So my executive coach, her name is Carol Robbins. She wrote this book called Connect. It's about interpersonal dynamics, right? And it's really a book that I recommend to other CEOs and executives who are thinking kind of beyond the problem at hand and the technology and more about like the building a connection with the people to lead with intention, to be vulnerable and ultimately create healthier spaces for people to grow.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing the book, and we wish you all the best. And thank you again for joining us here.
Thank you.